Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to more BlizzCon 2018 coverage, as we're going to be talking about what basically everybody is talking about from BlizzCon 2018 as we delve into the Diablo announcements and all the controversy that's followed them. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and be honest with everybody. I'm going to cover as much as I possibly can, especially in regards, but I'm going to keep it specifically to BlizzCon. There's a lot of information now that's being uncovered about Diablo Immortal, as well as the partnership that Blizzard has gained for Diablo Immortal through NetEase Games, and a lot of that is going to make this video very cumbersome. I don't want it to be too long, so I will put links in the description if you guys want to know additional details. You can go ahead and check there, but I'll cover as much as I possibly can, but there's a lot there in the backstory for it, but I want to keep this from a BlizzCon perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the end of the opening ceremony, because, like I said, it was a veritable thud to be able to have Diablo Immortal announced, which, if you haven't watched my previous video, please go watch it, because you'll see my thoughts on all of the other stuff from the opening ceremony's perspective, as well as this. They announced Diablo Immortal as an action RPG that was going to be on mobile devices, for iPhone, for iPad, for Android devices, and at that point, I was actually very interested in the story. The story is actually going to be taking place between Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction and Diablo 3, which roughly covers about 15 to 20 years of events that we haven't necessarily seen yet. Now, that's a lot for anybody who's trying to create a story. That's a lot of time frame to be able to go over, and so in a lot of cases, Diablo Immortal makes sense that it would cover these events and that it would actually be pretty engaging while doing so. But my hamper, obviously, was the fact that they were announcing it for mobile. But at this point, I was also approaching things fairly naive, in the fact that I literally looked at things and went, there is no possible way. Blizzard has done PC games for pretty much the majority of their life, or of the company's life, so I just didn't see that they wouldn't bring this to PC. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's not a whole lot to worry about with this announcement, because there will be a PC version, and we can all go play it there. And then this happened in the Q&A right after.
I was curious, I see a lot of mechanics that we've kind of been begging for in Diablo 3 in this. Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any, the current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC.
Now, we'll get to my thoughts in a minute, because I do want to cover at least some of the other information, and then we'll get to the Q&A, as that's pretty much the majority of the controversy that's coming out of this panel. Like I said, it's going to be covering between Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction and Diablo 3, but the way that they're looking at it, and this was actually named in the later Q&A, but I think it's pretty much the best way to be able to go and look at this, is they're framing it in the form of like a mobile MMO. I didn't like the term when they used it, but if you look at how this is all framed, it makes sense why they would call it that. This is a mobile equivalent of World of Sanctuary, which people have been crying for many years, thinking that it would be just as popular as World of Warcraft, and instead Diablo has decided to take it in this direction. What they basically announced was that there were going to be 8 public zones available to explore at launch. These would be these open world areas, kind of like Tristram in Diablo 2 and 3, and you would be able to go out and explore them, but you would not be alone. Other players would be able to join you in those public zones, and you'd be able to kill demons together. We got announcements of public zones like the Bilefen and the Frozen Tundra, to being a few. You also can have other players join you in these shared zones, although they weren't very clear if you could just go in solo in the public areas. I'm not sure if they're going to let you do that, but we'll see what happens there. There also is going to be instanced dungeon content on your phone, and they announced 4 instanced dungeons that are going to have a maximum of 4 players allowed in them. They had Kikoris Rapids, they also had the Tomb of Vahir, as well as the Forgotten Tower, as some of these dungeons that you can actually go through. And one of the ways that they define the gameplay in a dungeon as opposed to out in the world is that they can do more cinematic quality encounters in those as opposed to out in the world. They also announced that West March would be the capital city for Immortal. People might remember in Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls, we actually go to West March, and it is pretty much wrecked because of the invasion of Malthael and his servants. So at this point, we're going to be able to see a fully realized West March, or at least a mobile fully realized West March that isn't destroyed and that is a little bit more in its former glory. We're also going to have 6 classes at launch. We're going to have the Barbarian, the Crusader, the Demon Hunter, the Monk, the Necromancer, and the Wizard. All of them have basically pre-generated abilities on the demo that they had at the show floor, but they had the potential to have even more after that. So it's basically like adopting from Diablo 3's rune system and giving even more abilities to be able to utilize. And after they announced a few of these things, that's when we got to the Q&A, and this is where a predominant amount of the criticism that's coming from games journalists and from fellow gamers is coming to those who had dissenting opinion about Diablo Immortal, as well as the fact that it was the major announcement that Blizzard had for Diablo. In turn, we also had little moments like this.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Sparking even more controversy, as well as throwing the devs off in the fact that they really thought we were going to buy these announcements as the big announcements that they had. And that's on them, in my opinion. The one thing that you're going to hear throughout my opinions on Diablo Immortal is the devs did not realize what they were walking into. And I'm not saying that in a good way, because you could have anticipated that there was going to be some negative reaction. But they literally gave the impression that they did not expect anybody to talk bad about Diablo Immortal. And that was not the way to look at it, especially when you got choruses of boos basically stating that people are not satisfied with it, and then in turn reacting with,
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have
Everyone's got a
phones,
phone.
right?
which now basically makes the Diablo developers look like this.
If we didn't do it, and fortunately we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
The devs did not handle this Q&A well at all, and frankly, I'm going to say something that is going to piss off a few people. There was no harshness here. It was honest criticism. This was criticism that was happening not just at the Q&A at BlizzCon. This was stuff that was happening in forums, at YouTube at that point when the dislikes started to come in for the cinematic trailer. A lot of this was happening already, and a lot of the stuff that in turn got deleted, and yes, there were comments that got deleted from the Diablo YouTube channel, that was honest criticism. Not overly harsh criticism, but basically pointing out the fact that the majority of your audience for Diablo is on PC, and you're not going to include a PC version? That doesn't make sense for Blizzard at all. For the longest time, Blizzard has done PC games, and they've done PC games well, and when they've done offshoots of consoles, they're fine. There's nothing bad with them. I know people to this day that will still play the original Diablo and Diablo 2 on their original PlayStation. That's fine. That's great that they were able to keep those, especially when you look at the price tag of Diablo 2 today. Like, when I did the Let's Play for Diablo 2, I thought about doing it on PlayStation because I had problems on PC. But to go in this direction, and not just as an experiment, basically just throwing yourself out into the water, is lacking common sense, especially a lot of business sense here. The way that I look at it and the way that a lot of business people look at it is, if you're going to release something that's going to be a bit of a risk, like, say, Diablo Immortal, well, you want to make sure that your base audience is still there to help you out. And in this case, they wouldn't be. They would want this to come out on PC, and rightfully so. Am I asking for this thing to come out on Nintendo Switch because they did the Eternal Collection on Switch? No, but at least makes sense to put this on PC as well as mobile. That way you have the base market that already wants a Diablo game kind of taken care of, and then you can use the mobile version to be able to bring in even more audience. And who knows, maybe some of those people are not necessarily going to like it on mobile, but would then try it on PC and very much enjoy it. Now, I'm going to address the situation that a lot of people are bringing up that has to be here, the mobile aspect. Why do I have a problem with it being on mobile? I have two primary reasons as to why I do not think Diablo Immortal should solely be on mobile markets. I've pointed out the PC argument here, but these are the two major concerns that I have with playing a Diablo mobile game. One is that even though, yes, my iPhone, along with many, many, many others, is a supercomputer and it can handle a whole lot of things and it can do tons of stuff, I'm not denying that concept. But the one thing that doesn't get addressed in this argument is that this phone is constantly running various apps just to keep itself in a neutral state, just to keep itself ready, just in case you need to get a map to be able to go somewhere, just in case you need to bring up things like Facebook so that you can check out your morning agenda. And that's where the problem lies with mobile, is that while all this crap is going on, yes, this phone is a computer, and its resources are already being used fairly consistently. So all it takes is to throw in something that's very graphic intensive, like a mobile game, and you're going to start having lag. You're going to start having frame rate issues. I don't care what the demo stations ran fairly good, even though I'm starting to hear testimony that that's not entirely the case. They actually did start to have frame rate and lag issues. So at that point, I don't care because those are demo stations that have been planned out and are exactly what they need to be for the devs to be able to show it off. They are not your average iPhone that already has tons of pictures on it and has tons of Facebook and tweets and everything like that already put onto its resources. It's not that. They're not taxed. These are going to be taxed phones that are going to be expected to run a game that requires you to make split-second decisions in order to survive and kill a boss. It's not going to work out as well as people are making it out to be. I don't care what Wyatt Chang wants to be able to shove down people's throats. There are going to be problems. Even Hearthstone has problems on phones and iPad. I love playing Hearthstone on my iPad, but man, it burns my legs after a while, after at least a couple of games. That's how taxing it is on the resources of that iPad. It starts burning after a while, and the phone is worse. So at that point, I'm not really interested in that one. And on top of that, wonky controls on a touchscreen, that's just begging to have a split-second decision go bad. That's just begging to have 30 seconds of lag and then all of a sudden you're dead. It's begging for trouble. So that's thing one that I have a problem with. Thing two, I don't think I necessarily need to bring up, but let's go ahead and do it. The mobile market is full of predatory practices. Do I need to bring up to you guys all of the mobile games that have been brought up over the many years, which have had predatory practices with microtransactions and such, that have basically tried to screw gamers and want you to buy them out of nostalgic love? Harry Potter's mobile game, we just brought that up a couple of months ago, where you got stuck in Devil's Snare and you had to pay to save your own life. That's why I also don't like that concept, is because when you think of the mobile market, yes, it's a burgeoning market. It's also a burgeoning market that likes to take advantage of people. It likes to take advantage of people through microtransactions. And in case we all didn't learn the lesson from Star Wars Battlefront 2, microtransactions kind of piss off the gamer audience, especially PC gamers. So we're already worried about walking this mobile game into that market and then getting microtransactioned to death because we want to just be able to go and do a dungeon. We want to be able to just do that. I'm not even going into the fact that I think it's dumb that Diablo, which is technically soloable, and that's one of the things I like about Diablo, is I can go and do it solo at any time of the day. And you're basically making it so if I want to do these dungeons, I have to bring people in? I'm not saying that I'm antisocial or anything like that, but the bottom line is sometimes I just want to do it alone because I don't want people slowing me down, or I don't want to have to talk to people or stuff like that. You're already anchoring me into being able to experience this content, but having to do so with other people. I know that WoW does that, and I completely understand it, but there are occasional moments in WoW where I can just go into a raid all by myself and go do a transmog run. And I would also like to point out another thing that I think is also going to be a major problem for the devs when they go back on Monday is one of the other moments I took notice of in this Q&A that I noticed a lot of other people didn't was that Diablo, one of its cornerstones that was actually created by the fan base is hardcore mode. For those who don't know what that is, hardcore mode is basically where you play for keeps. If your character dies, it dies permanently. And they actually allowed in Diablo 3 for you to be able to do hardcore mode. So at that point, you didn't need to keep track of it. You just died and you were done. They've already said that because of this mobile experience, which I can already understand why they won't do it, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that when you're trying to bring in new people, they're not really looking at hardcore mode. And that is disappointing for Diablo fans that are looking forward to it. That's a bit of a problem. And I'm also going to say this, I do not believe Wyatt Chang when he says that they're still thinking about how the overall payment method is going to be. Activision is involved in that. NetEase is involved in that. And unfortunately, both of those guys have records of doing predatory practices. I don't necessarily know NetEase's reputation, but I know Activision's. So at that point, yeah, you're going to have it. I don't even need to wait to hear you say it 6 months later. You're going to have microtransactions. You're going to be doing predatory practices in here because it's the mobile market and you're looking to make a buck off of it. And I don't want this to just be entirely negative. I still like the idea of Diablo Immortal. I've said in the wrap-up, I will not play this as long as it's on mobile, which is a crying shame. I think that it actually has a lot of potential story-wise and has a lot of really great things that could happen within it. I also kind of say the same thing about Kingdom Hearts Key or Kai or however you want to say it. There's a lot of story potential that you can make up for in those events. The problem is that with Kingdom Hearts Key, it was not available here for the longest time. And here is that I'm now officially worried this game is not going to be able to play very well. It's going to be plagued with microtransactions. It's going to be plagued with basically pay gates to be able to move forward like every other franchise that has moved to the mobile market has been. Has nobody has everybody forgotten about the absolute fiasco at the EA E3 panel unveiling Command & Conquer Rivals and the backlash that came from that? I'll guarantee you Patrick Soderlund hasn't, because he kind of sat there and said, all you gamers are really entitled and you should just sit back and listen to us. We know better. Sometimes you do, Patrick. Sometimes you do. And sometimes your gamer audience knows better than you. See what I mean? It's very difficult not to get into the rant here, but I'm going to go ahead and say this just bottom line. Wyatt Chang, Diablo team, I really hope that when you came in this morning and discussed what happened at BlizzCon, it wasn't that you guys were just sitting there talking about how you were picked on, like this guy wants to make it out to be, because the bottom line is that it was honest criticism. I watched those panels. I saw what they said. I've seen a majority of the forums. They were not harsh criticism. They were not death threats or anything like that. You're going to have that element. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but there was honest criticism in there that was being deleted, that was being silenced, and it shouldn't have been. So I'm hoping that when you walked into the office this morning, that you took that into account. And I'm just going to go ahead and make my own personal plea to Wyatt Chang. Please, 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 please reconsider whether or not this gets a mobile-only release. Even if you were just to put it out to consoles because you're worried that it won't be able to transition over to PC very well. I don't have that worry with you. You guys are PC gods. You would figure it out. Even if it had to be that NetEase was the one that did the mobile version, and you guys were the one that did the PC version. It's definitely possible, and you could make up for tons and tons of mistakes that were made during these panels. You could say to the PC audience that you spurned numerous times in there, or do I need to play the "do you not have phones" quote again? By the way, a lot of Diablo fans that I'm coming to realize don't have those phones, so you've already excluded them. Please take that into account and reconsider whether or not this gets a PC release. I think it would do well, and I think it would repair a lot of the damage that was done here. But I will at least give you this credit. You found a way to unite the Diablo audience. Whereas there were solid Diablo 2 fans and Diablo 3 fans, you found a way to unite them. It's just unfortunate that they united against you, and that they are fighting against you to make sure Diablo Immortal sees no success whatsoever. And the bottom line is, it's going to get money. But this is not the way that you should do it. Please, Wyatt, reconsider a PC port of this game, and at least give us that. I think that would be everything that you could, because there were a lot of Diablo fans out there that are being considered haters right now. And don't worry, gaming journalists, I'm going to get to you in a second. There are a lot of those guys out there that were just like me and said, this is an amazing concept with great stories. The only reason I'm not willing to take this on was because it's on PC. That's it. Or because it's not on PC. That's it. I don't want to play this on mobile. If you make a PC version, I will play it. I'm not going to buy into microtransactions if they're there. I will play the way that I want to play it, and if there's enough of it, if you pay gated enough, yeah, I'll probably quit. But I can at least make you this promise right here and now. If you put it on PC, I will at least review it. And I'll give you an honest one, because I will be paying. I won't be asking you for a review copy or anything like that. I will pay myself to get that initial version and be able to judge it for you, and I will give you the most honest criticism that I possibly can. Sometimes that hurts, sometimes that's good. But one thing you have to accept also, Blizzard, is that you alienated the Diablo fan base in your actions. It wasn't just that they were big fat meanie pantses, you also were too. You basically said to anybody who doesn't have a smartphone, well, sucks to be you. And I know that that number is not as big as people make it out to be, but it is a number, and you just alienated them. You also alienated those who did think that this was a joke, who did think that this was just you harping all this up and you were going to then unveil Diablo 4. Just as much as you think that that was offensive to you, you were just as offensive to them because of the fact you made it very clear you were not ready to receive any kind of feedback. And just to wrap this up, because I already know that this video is getting amazingly long, to the game journalists out there, and I'm not going to name you, but I really should, I'm just going to point out the exact same thing that I just did with Blizzard. You alienated your reader base today. You can call us douchebags, you can call us asshats, you can call us whatever you want. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that read your publication. We're the ones that read your reviews. And we're the ones that determine whether or not you have any kind of credibility. And you lost some of that today. A while back, I did a video about why I do not consider myself a journalist. And you just gave the perfect example of why I do not do so. Because you all behaved in the most shittiest manner you possibly could have. You did not maintain journalistic integrity, you instead demolished it. And now whatever backlash comes your way, you entirely deserve. And I'm not making threats. I don't need to make a death threat to you. All I need to do is pose common sense. Which is that the job that you work in, I know all too well, is basically the equivalent of shark-infested waters. And you've now just given a whole lot of notice to yourself while you're in the shark cage. How is this important to you? Well, let me point it out this way. All it takes is one drop of blood, one incident, one inappropriate handshake, one inappropriate hug, one inappropriate statement towards someone of the opposite sex or even your own sex. All it takes is one incident where you lashed out at the fan base or even your reader base, as we've seen this year. All it takes is one incident for then you to be demolished yourself, and for you to lose that vaunted credibility that you hold so dear, and for somebody who's up and coming, who's hungrier than you, and that wants to be noticed far more than you, and doesn't have the levels of ego that you're producing right now, to then take your spot. And I can at least say that with consistency, I'll be just as critical to them as I am to you right here and now. The only difference between those is that I will remember their names, and I will have promptly forgotten yours. Keep making fun of us. See how well that does for you. Because I can speak from experience, it won't. And with that, that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Thankfully, we will not be talking about such negative stuff this time around. And again, I want to emphasize, if they make that PC port, I will definitely play it. There's a lot of good here. But unfortunately, it's also mired in all of the crap that is mobile gaming right now. And you can't avoid that, even though it's a young and a burgeoning market. Next time, we're going to be tackling Heroes of the Storm and their announcement of their first ever hero unique to the Nexus.